Prepare yourself for revelations that will upend your perception. What will be revealed is not on the surface and may cause initial discomfort, forcing you to reconsider established views of yourself, those around you, and the world in general. This will not be a motivational speech or embellished truth, but rather a direct and precise blow aimed at awakening. Perhaps you have felt that you possess knowledge that you cannot share, as if there is a hidden truth inside that no one is ready for, and you are not even sure you want to reveal it. This is not a manifestation of paranoia or chance, but rather an instinct that has taught the wise to remain silent amidst the general noise for centuries, to observe when others seek to stand out. It is an inner voice warning against revealing your plans. In a world where everyone strives to know everything about you, the advantage remains with those who know how to remain silent. If you are currently experiencing some internal discomfort, do not be afraid. On the contrary, this is a good sign, indicating that further reflections will touch you in the most sensitive spot, your desire for understanding, recognition, and acceptance by others. Consider how many times you, driven by sincerity, openly expressed your thoughts and feelings, and in return faced only alienation, ridicule, or even betrayal. How many times, hoping for spiritual closeness, did you tell the truth, but in the end became just a convenient target for others' attacks? The fact is that straightforwardness and frankness do not always bring liberation. Sometimes they can be tantamount to suicide. And the saddest thing is that we have been taught to believe the opposite since childhood, instilled with the idea that truth is something noble, that it should always be made public. However, as Machiavelli wisely noted, truth is not just a right, it is a powerful weapon. And those who do not know how to use it in time, or even worse, do not understand when it should be kept secret, are doomed to be just pawns in someone else's game. Everything you have ever shown to the world, every thoughtless word, every moment of vulnerability, all this has been recorded. Perhaps not always consciously, but this information exists. And sooner or later, there will be someone who will be able to use it against you. In modern society, information has lost its original value, turning into an instrument of domination. People strive not to understand you, but to measure, calculate your weaknesses, find entry points where you fail, where you are most vulnerable. And if you are not ready to accept this fact, you are destined to repeat the same scenario again and again. To trust, to open up, and to receive a painful blow in response. This is not a place for effusions and lamentations. This appeal is not a safety cushion for healing emotional wounds. Rather, it is a mirror exposing the truth, a sharp scalpel opening an abscess, and a nagging alarm clock that cannot be dismissed. The author intends to voice what many prefer to keep silent about. The modern person is overly open. The problem is not so much in actions as in the uncontrolled disclosure of personal information. The individual turns his life into a public exposition without thinking about who is watching him from the shadows. This is where the danger lies. Villains do not flaunt their intentions. They do not warn about their actions, do not criticize openly, but patiently observe, keep silent, and wait for the right moment. The most disgusting thing in this situation is that while a person is being frank, they are studying him. While he shares his fears, they are developing ways to use them against him. While he pours out his soul on social networks, they assess the degree of his vulnerability. In the era of universal chatter, silence has become the most serious threat. The truth, which everyone so fiercely defends, the very one that burns inside and bursts out without a filter, becomes the most obvious Achilles heel. Long before the current generation of thinkers, Nikolo Machiavelli understood the fundamental principle of power. It grows not from simply uttering the truth, but from knowing when it is appropriate to do so. And more importantly, when to remain silent. For there are situations when the truth is like not light, but explosive dynamite. A careless word can lead to catastrophic consequences. Do not mistakenly believe that silence is a manifestation of cowardice. On the contrary, it is a strategic move, a sign of intelligence, and a way to survive. Those who do not master the art of silence are not capable of domination. If someone still believes that sincerity will ensure his invulnerability, he should carefully study this issue. It will be not only about understanding the truth, but also about how to use it, turning it into a shield, a sword, and an art form. In a world where visibility often outweighs intentions, the truth is not shouted out loud, but dosed. Every word spoken can become either a bullet or a rope, and it is the speaker who decides whether to shoot or tighten the knot. The most dangerous enemy of truth is not a lie, but uncontrolled transparency. The desire of people for complete openness, for the publication of every thought, emotion, and mistake, is dictated by the mistaken belief that this will make them more human, authentic, and trustworthy. However, they do not realize that by doing so, they are giving up the most important tool, secrecy. Truth devoid of measure loses its value. A person who exposes himself without a filter loses his advantage. In modern society, there is a disturbing trend. Authenticity is increasingly identified with unceremonious emotional exposure. Many believe that sincerity lies in recklessly disclosing all aspects of their lives, in demonstrating every reaction and experience. People strive to display their failures, disappointments, and inner emptiness, naively believing that this contributes to establishing strong connections with others. However, such frankness has the opposite effect. Instead of trusting relationships, a detailed dossier is created, a detailed map of personal weaknesses, insecurities, and limitations. A natural question arises: who is collecting this valuable information? The answer is disappointing. Not close friends, not lovers, and not even a grateful audience that they might want to inspire. The information is collected by those who prefer to remain in the shadows, those who have the gift of attentive listening and know how to use the knowledge gained in their own interests. They understand perfectly well that in the modern world, whoever owns information has power and control. No less dangerous is the common misconception about the existence of a safe environment, a psychological illusion that makes one believe in the possibility of complete self-disclosure without any negative consequences. It seems that you can say everything that comes to mind without fear of retribution. However, one should realize the harsh truth. There is no absolutely safe environment, even in relationships with the closest people. At some point, everyone begins to act in their own interests. And if others do not know how to properly dispose of the frankness they have received, they may, even unintentionally, use it against you. The sad paradox is that many people, having learned from bitter experience, continue to repeat the same mistake over and over again. They open their souls again and again, hoping for understanding and sympathy, believing that this time they will not be betrayed. However, the root of the problem lies not in others, but in their own inflated expectations and naive belief that vulnerability gives them some kind of strength. True strength manifests itself in the ability to keep one's feelings and thoughts under control. Strong personalities do not seek to flaunt their experiences, explain their motives, or justify their actions. They realize that secrecy is not a manifestation of weakness, but a powerful tool of control. Silence for them is not emptiness, but a carefully thought-out strategy. Often, withholding known information turns out to be much more profitable than laying everything bare. After all, information not supported by wisdom turns into exposure. Here arises another important aspect that eludes the attention of many: emotional debt. This insidious trap slams shut when a person opening their soul subconsciously expects mutual understanding and support. However, most people are not ready for such frankness, and some do not even want to know other people's secrets. But, having gained access to personal information, they involuntarily feel like they have power over the person who has confided in them. Thus, a person, without realizing it, becomes a hostage of their own frankness. And it's not about direct blackmail, but about the binding thought that now they are known, that part of them belongs to another. The fear of exposure deprives them of freedom of action, forcing them to constantly look back. It turns out to be a vicious circle. A person striving for liberation through revelation actually hands over the keys to their soul into the hands of others. The most paradoxical thing is that to gain power over a person, betrayal as such is not always required. Sometimes it is enough to realize the potential possibility of such betrayal to subjugate their will. Think about how often the feeling of emotional dependence arose in you because someone had important information about you. How many promising decisions were rejected due to fear of disclosing personal secrets? How often did you restrain your impulses, guided not by moral principles but by fear of exposure? And what is even sadder, how many times did you have to act against your own desires just to protect the innermost truths that you rashly entrusted to others? This is the true price of such frankness, not in public condemnation but in self-censorship. A person turns into the warden of their own prison, built in the naive belief that frankness will bring liberation. However, true freedom lies not in unbridled outpouring of thoughts, but in the ability to choose with surgical precision what, when, and to whom to say. Uncontrolled truth turns into a slow-acting poison, poisoning life until it is too late. A person becomes emotionally dependent on others, refraining from using their secrets, living in constant fear that the honesty they proclaimed will turn against them. In this context, Machiavelli's teachings appear not as cynicism, but as insight. He was one of the first to realize that unspread knowledge is concentrated power, that unexpressed emotions are not suppression, but protection. Truth, devoid of a halo of sanctity, is a valuable resource that must be skillfully managed. In an era when information flows like a river and everyone strives to show themselves off, the greatest danger is posed by those who prefer to remain silent and observe. These people who are able to listen more than they speak become a kind of gray eminences of our time. They absorb other people's secrets without giving away a single emotion and patiently wait for the right moment. While the rest tirelessly chatter, they analyze. While others raise their voices in argument, they consider their next steps. And when it seems that the situation is under complete control, it turns out that it is already too late. It is important to learn a simple truth. Truth is a valuable resource that should not be given to just anyone. Not everyone is able to appreciate it and use it correctly. The world is structured in such a way that those who succeed are not those who expose all their feelings and thoughts, but those who know how to hide their true intentions. Those who prefer to act from the shadows, remaining unnoticed and underestimated. After all, there is nothing more dangerous than the silence of a person who knows everything, but prefers to keep their knowledge to themselves. If all of the above seems like an exaggeration, you should ask yourself one simple question. What was the last truth you told that you later regretted? And the saddest thing is that even after realizing all these truths, deep down there remains a hope that it is possible to be completely honest and avoid negative consequences. There remains a naive belief that one day someone will understand and appreciate sincerity. However, it is worth surgically dispelling the widespread misconception about the need for universal openness. Not every person deserves the privilege of knowing the true essence of a personality. Not everyone should be given access to the innermost corners of the inner world, since there is a fundamental difference between sincerity and naivety, for which one has to pay. People show interest in others, but often not out of altruistic motives. They are driven by a desire to assess how far they can go in a relationship, and how easy it is to manipulate a person. Providing comprehensive information about yourself, a detailed map of your mind, emotions, and vulnerabilities can lead to a loss of respect and transformation into an object of manipulation. In this game, the one who reveals their cards risks the most. It is necessary to realize the harsh truth. There is no need to expose all your feelings in order to show authenticity. The depth of personality does not require complete openness. In certain situations, silence becomes not an omission, but a statement, the erection of a wall, a code that only the wise can decipher. Secrecy is not a manifestation of coldness, but a high-level defense, an emotional strategy, and a tool for survival. It is important to remember that universal understanding is not required to confirm the reality of a story. The existence of truth does not depend on anyone's approval. A person's purpose is not to be understood, but to create something so durable that it does not need additional explanations to assert its value. There is a widespread desire for approval in society, but true arbiters of fate prefer to remain in the shadows, guided by their own principles. They do not need excuses. Their actions speak for themselves, causing changes in the world around them. Everyone has a choice. To continue wasting themselves on those who are not able to appreciate it, or to believe that a person's value is not determined by recognition. The alternative is to create inner strength, invisible, selective, and powerful. The beginning of this path is a transformation of thinking, allowing you to observe while remaining unnoticed, to listen and analyze carefully, instead of reacting impulsively. Over time, those around you begin to notice changes, feeling something new in a person that defies conventional understanding. At this moment, without further ado, victory is won. This message concludes here, but perhaps it marks the beginning of a new chapter in life. A life where there's no need to explain your actions, but rather to create a reality that commands respect, even if the reasons behind it remain unclear. If you, the reader, have reached this point, it's not by chance, but a sign of readiness for change, for the development of strategic thinking and calculation. It's important to leave your mark, not as a loud declaration, but as a harbinger of future events, felt by all, yet unseen. Attention to all who have felt an internal transformation after watching this video. If you feel that your perception of the world has changed, the author encourages you to express it in the comments with the phrase, "Strength is not spoken, it is felt." This will serve as a sign of belonging to the elect, ready to change the rules of the game discreetly. For those who crave similar content, seeking to nourish their essence, which prefers to remain in the shadows but possess unshakable power, subscribing to the channel is suggested. However, it's important to realize that this channel is not intended for a wide audience. Here, the goal is not to motivate, but to deprogram the mind. The author bids farewell until the next video, allowing for the possibility that the viewer is already at a different level of development. At this level, silence becomes a new mode of communication. The author concludes his speech, but the viewer begins to act without unnecessary noise, remembering that the creators of history do not need permission. They leave behind an echo that cannot be ignored.